was a time when I couldn't exactly identify what was wrong, but I knew something was. It was as if my body was always on alert, my heart racing, and a constant feeling of discomfort, even in the calmest moments. Back then, I didn't know that this was anxiety. I just thought I was tense or stressed, something many of us women end up normalizing in our routines. It was only when I started paying attention to the more subtle signs that I realized how much anxiety had become part of my daily life. Little things, like the habit of constantly checking my phone or the difficulty in concentrating on a single task, were reflections of something bigger happening inside me. These signs don't appear all at once. They accumulate slowly, until suddenly they become hard to ignore. A memorable experience was during a trip I took with my family. I was surrounded by beautiful landscapes, but my mind wouldn't stop. Instead of enjoying the moment, I worried about things that were out of my control. It was there that I realized anxiety was robbing me not only of peace, but also of the ability to live fully. It became a starting point for seeking to understand this feeling better and how to deal with it. The first step was recognizing that anxiety is not weakness or lack of control. It's the way our body responds to something that feels like a threat, even if that threat isn't real. Understanding this was liberating. I began to notice when my heart raced or when my breath became short, without judging myself for it. It was as if for the first time, I was willing to listen to my body instead of fighting against it. And now, I ask you, how has your relationship with anxiety been? Perhaps you, like I did back then, feel the signs but still don't know how to interpret them. Don't worry. The simple act of seeking to understand is already a big step. Anxiety doesn't define who you are, but it can teach you a lot about your emotions, limits, and needs. When I started exploring what really triggered my anxiety, I realized that much of it stemmed from the expectations I placed on myself. Perhaps you have felt this too. The pressure to be productive all the time, to meet the demands of everyone around you, and still appear calm and in control. It's like trying to carry the world on your shoulders while everything inside feels like it's about to collapse. I remember a specific moment. It was an ordinary morning, and I had an endless list of tasks to tackle. Even before finishing my coffee, I already felt suffocated by the weight of everything I needed to do. That was when I decided to stop, grab a notebook, and write down everything that was running through my mind. When I saw those words on paper, I realized how much of my worries were created by me. Hypothetical scenarios, fears of not pleasing others, or even things that, in practice, I had no control over. It was through this exercise that I began to understand. Anxiety doesn't come out of nowhere. It is fueled by thoughts, habits, and even the environment we live in. I asked myself, what really matters on this list? What can I delegate or leave for later? It was liberating to realize that I didn't have to carry everything alone. Perhaps you are facing something similar right now. Another major factor that fueled my anxiety was the overload of information. We are constantly connected, receiving news, notifications, and comparing our lives to others on social media. I realized my brain never had time to rest. I then started establishing boundaries, less time on my phone before bed, uninterrupted, moments to focus on a single task, and most importantly, learning to disconnect when I felt overwhelmed. As challenging as it may be, identifying what triggers your anxiety is like mapping an unknown territory. Each discovery is an opportunity to adjust your route and find ways to cope with these sensations. It could be a chaotic environment, a thought pattern, or even a seemingly innocuous habit. like skipping meals or staying up late. And now, I ask you, what might be fueling your anxiety? How about taking a moment to reflect on that? Don't judge yourself during this process. Each insight is another step towards the balance you deserve to achieve. In the beginning, it seemed impossible to slow down. My mind was always racing, and the idea of stopping for a few minutes felt more like a task than a solution. But one day, a friend introduced me to something so simple that it even seemed silly to stop and breathe deeply for a minute. I confess I doubted at first, but I decided to give it a try. I chose a moment when I felt especially anxious. I closed my eyes, placed my hand on my chest, and inhaled deeply through my nose, exhaling slowly through my mouth. To my surprise, that single minute made a huge difference. No, the anxiety didn't magically disappear, but I felt a clarity and calmness that I hadn't experienced in a long time. That's when I realized small actions have the power to transform our emotional state. After that, I began exploring other practices. Meditation was one of them, but not in the traditional format that many imagine. I created my own way, like walking in silence while paying attention to the sounds around me, or even washing the dishes with complete focus on the sensation of the water and soap on my hands. These mindfulness practices help me break free from the spiral of thoughts and connect to the present, which is where life truly happens. Another practice that helped me was movement. It doesn't have to be something intense, just something that gets you out of inertia. For me, it was yoga. The simple stretches and connection with my breath created an immediate sense of relief. Maybe for you, it's a walk in the park, a dance in the living room, or even a few minutes of stretching upon waking. What's important isn't what you do, but how it makes you feel. Finally, something that made all the difference was creating a daily ritual. For me, it was starting the day with a warm tea while listing 3 things I was grateful for. This gave me perspective and gradually shifted my focus from scarcity to abundance. Small gestures like this can have a huge impact on your emotional well-being. Now I ask you, what could be your starting point? Perhaps a deep breath right now, or setting aside 5 minutes of your day for something that makes you feel good. Give it a try. Sometimes the answer lies in the simplest gestures. For a long time, I felt like I had to please everyone, that the only way to be accepted was to say yes to everything and everyone. This need to please, to feel necessary, began to drain my energy and, of course, increase my anxiety. It was as if I was always doing things for others and forgetting about myself. But one day, realizing that this was leaving me exhausted, I made a decision. It was time to learn to say no. At first, it was a real challenge. I felt guilty, thought I was being selfish, and that I was failing as a friend, mother, or coworker. However, over time, I realized that saying no doesn't mean being insensitive or disregarding others. The contrary, it is an act of self-respect, and also a signal of respect for others, because by taking care of myself, I can offer more quality in what I do and in my relationships. I remember a significant episode. I was invited to a work meeting on the weekend, something I clearly didn't want to do. But out of fear of disappointing someone, I accepted. The next day, my anxiety was so high that I could barely participate in the meeting productively. It was in that moment that I realized my energy and time are valuable. From then on, I began to practice the power of no, and the difference was remarkable. Establishing healthy boundaries is more than just refusing commitments. It's about recognizing what is important to you, what brings you peace and balance. I started prioritizing activities that truly nourished my soul, like spending quality time with my family or simply being alone without external pressures. The no became a foundation for a life more aligned with my values and needs. Perhaps you also feel that it's difficult to establish these boundaries. The feeling of guilt and fear of displeasing others is common. However, know that there is nothing wrong with reserving time for yourself. On the contrary, it's essential for you to be your best version, both for yourself and for those around you. I invite you to reflect. What in your life needs a no? Where can you establish a healthier boundary to preserve your peace and well-being? Sometimes the key to a more tranquil life lies precisely in this simple yet powerful act. I have always felt a sense of tranquility when surrounded by nature. However, for a long time, I didn't give this the attention it deserved. Until one day, after a week of intense work and stress, I decided to take a break and walk through a nearby park. When I arrived, the calm of the place enveloped me deeply. The trees, the sound of the birds, the gentle breeze. Everything seemed to align to create a space of peace that I didn't know I needed. It was a moment of revelation, and I began to realize how much nature has the ability to change us in the present. We spend most of our time connected to the digital world, always tethered to something, but often disconnected from ourselves. In that moment, I learned that nature has a natural healing power, whether walking barefoot on the grass, listening to the sound of a waterfall, or simply watching a flower bloom. These small moments reconnect us with what is essential, the now. Nature has a unique way of helping us slow down, reminding us that life doesn't have to be a rush. I started making this a daily habit. I began dedicating at least 15 minutes a day to connect with the natural world, whether in a park, in the garden, or even just gazing at the moon at night. This time helped me organize my thoughts, clear my mind, and recharge my energy. One of the greatest benefits I noticed was a reduction in anxiety. The more I connected with nature, the more my mind found space to rest. The hustle and bustle of daily life ceased to be a constant pressure, and I began to understand the importance of having these moments of pause. I learned that nature not only teaches us about the outside world, but also about ourselves. It shows us that, just like the seasons, we have our own cycles of renewal. Now I ask you, have you been finding time to connect with nature? Even if it's just for a few minutes, this reconnection can bring many benefits to your mental and emotional health. Don't underestimate the power of nature. Sometimes the answer to what we seek is right in front of us, in a simple moment and outdoors. These small steps to care for yourself, establish healthy boundaries, and reconnect with nature are more than just simple practices. They are true acts of transformation. Every decision we make toward our well-being is a choice for inner peace, emotional health, and mental clarity. Life doesn't have to be a constant race to achieve external goals. When we allow ourselves to slow down, when we understand that taking care of ourselves is fundamental, our journey becomes more balanced and meaningful. Have you noticed how small adjustments in your day can lead to enormous changes in your mental and emotional state? Each of us has the power to create the life we desire. We just need to make the right choices and, above all, prioritize what truly matters. What are you doing today to take care of yourself? How are you nourishing your mind and body with the choices you make? I invite you to continue reflecting on these points and to start implementing some of these changes in your routine. The transformation you seek is already within your reach. Sometimes the key to change lies in looking within yourself and realizing that you have everything you need to move forward with calm and confidence. And if you wish to continue on this journey of self-discovery and well-being, don't forget to follow our channel. We have much more content that could be exactly what you need to continue your journey. Until the next step.